I got three stories here. It's a bit of a smorgasbord. We're gonna get out the user-owned charcuterie and talk about three things at once. Okay, item one: World Mobile. They raised a bunch of money in a token sale. The idea here is to use tokens in Zanzibar, which is the island off the coast of Tanzania, to power a mesh network that will give people greater access to the internet. We'll see how it goes. TBD. Second story. Hit me. There it is. Former Apple CEO Gil Amelio joins Cirus blockchain as an advisor, senior advisor in this instance. This is a blockchain-powered data ownership project that gives you a share of the data that you are constantly pumping out into the internet in a way that looks to be more fair. And last ingredient in this recipe, three, hit me, Helium. All right, there we go. They do something similar to the data ownership model, but for low power Wi-Fi devices that typically connect to like Internet of Things devices like environmental sensors or like e-scooters or stuff like that. So you get a little hotspot in your house, you get a share of the token rewards for expanding the footprint of this otherwise decentralized network. Okay, so that's a long-winded way to say there's three things that have popped up in recent weeks about user-owned networks, and I'm really curious to know if any of us here thinks that crypto is at the tipping point for these networks to actually work, where there's a critical mass around these things, and you can do these decentralized, token-incentivized models that provide real-world services, be it mesh networks in Zanzibar or connecting e-scooters to the internet in San Francisco. I'm going to toss this out just to see what our current thinking on user-owned networks is. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Will, are you bullish or bearish on some of these ideas that are bandied about by these three various projects?
Oh. You didn't just throw up when you said my name?
Oh, but it's just a natural. Sorry.
We all do, Will. We all do.
I know you do.
Will about that?
No, mesh networks are really interesting. I don't, like, to your question about like, is this a tipping point? I think that Bitcoin did kind of pop the genie out of the bottle in the sense that I think more than ever, people are talking about the idea of value creation just being something that is wholly enveloped in someone's mind. Like this JPEG has value because I think it has value, and then other people start thinking the same way, and boom, before you know it, you have penguins selling for $5 million a pop. And I think that same kind of logic can be passed down to like other technologies that are popping up, whether that be a mesh network or a digital currency like Bitcoin. So the sky's the limit, I think, in a lot of sense for these things. I don't know if they have, I'd say, like fundamentals in the sense that we don't know like what their cash flow would be. We don't know how many users these mesh networks are going to have. Like those things have still to be adopted. I know a lot of people are interested in getting like Helium nodes because they can earn Helium tokens. I don't know very many people who are using Helium actively, though I'm excited to see if people start doing it because I think mesh networks are a very cool technology that's just not widely adopted yet. But we need to hear Naomi's thoughts, so I'm going to give it to her.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Mesh networks are really kind of the next stage of the internet, right? When you have the internet, we kind of think of it as this decentralized thing, and it's really not at all decentralized. There are so many ways that this is a completely centralized and controllable system, and mesh networks help to mitigate that to a certain extent. And people have been exploring this world for a really long time, trying to figure out, well, how do we actually have robust and fast and efficient mesh networks? And it's a difficult problem to solve. I wonder whether incentivizing people in these systems is the right answer, or maybe it's just a matter of getting better technology. So yeah, I'm not quite sure where this is headed, but definitely, I mean, especially if you're looking at places that don't currently have internet, mesh networks are definitely going to be a part of that. But things like Starlink are also exciting for places that don't currently have internet. So the articles you brought to the table, Zach, I thought were really interesting, especially that fishing town where they were saying like, we set it up, we couldn't go back for a really long time because of COVID. And when we came back, we found that all these fishermen had started to utilize the internet to get their produce to like Switzerland or Europe, before they had to sell everything as dried food because they couldn't directly connect with their customers. And now that they had the internet, they could, which kind of revolutionized their business model and create a whole bunch more opportunity. I thought that was such an interesting point. And we're so normal, like the internet in our lives is so normalized, we forget at the profound impact it has in connecting people across other sides of the world. And we have yet to see a huge swath of the global population get access to the internet. That was what Elon Musk was saying with Starlink, why he wanted to create these low orbiting satellites and kind of create this mesh across the world. And like, I mean, the profound impact, like, it's going to fundamentally change the internet as we know it. To see billions of people suddenly get access to it is going to fundamentally change that, whether it's through mesh networks or whether it's through, you know, low orbiting satellites or whatnot. I think that the internet as we know it is going to really, really change as more of these people get access to it, which is pretty exciting. But Jen, I'll throw to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I think mesh networks offer a really optimistic and cool way to look at the future. And Naomi, just off the back of what you were saying, and when I think about mesh networks, I think about bringing connectivity to some of the most rural places in the world. And when I was living in South Africa, there was a lot of talk about mesh networks and how they could solve a lot of problems. So maybe can you talk us through how that would work for someone who's just hearing about mesh networks for the first time on this show? How would it work? How do mesh networks bring connectivity to these parts of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Sorry, go for it, Zach.
You got it, Amy.
Hey, you got it, Zach. You got it.
No, I was gonna zoom out, but you have the right answer. There's a fly on my face. You have the right answer about this stuff.
I was just going to say that mesh networks don't rely on you having access to like an internet service provider. You're sort of piggybacking off the connection of those around you, kind of creating this mesh of like localized connections, which is kind of a very interesting thing. And you have large enough meshes, then suddenly you don't perhaps need to have access to like this centralized internet. It's like it's kind of this evolving phenomenon we're trying to figure out. Like there's a company called GoTenna, which creates these analog devices that help you create networks. I know at PorcFest we use them a lot when the internet is bad to create these mesh networks and kind of spread that connectivity around, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's just a different way of providing connectivity without having to like lay those initial cables, have the internet service provider servicing every single person. But Zach, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, broadly speaking, I think that's a great example, right? Whether it's mesh network or, again, these IoT devices, it's sort of like this small but many conundrum, right? You know, typically we have these centralized players who lay the pipes and they stand to reap the largest benefits. But what crypto presents is the ability to maybe incentivize this this network of many small players who can provide services in a way that doesn't end around some of these central service providers. So I think it's only been it'll probably only be a matter of time until these networks can attract enough crypto savvy people to get something going. So I think I'm just curious to see if this becomes an emerging trend over the next 6 to 12 months, but time will tell.